Camera 2 rolling. So we now have speed on both cameras, and Alan, sound speed?
Yes.
Okay. And Candy?
After eating docuseries, Ashley, take one.
All right, once we're relaxed and settled, everybody settled, everybody else rolling, whatever. Okay, sir, when you're ready.
Actually, when I ask you questions, just give it like a 1 second pause and then you can give your answers, okay?
Okay.
Tell us your name, organization, and what you guys do.
So my name is Ashley Chapman. I am with the Red Cord. We are Southwest Oklahoma's only anti-human trafficking organization. And our main mission is to raise awareness in our communities, but also to educate our local communities on what they can do to combat human trafficking, and support law enforcement and those who are in the fight against human trafficking.
How did you personally get involved? What was the story that first made you aware that human trafficking is real locally? And then what made you get involved?
So the how and the why are two different things. The how is not very exciting. I got called one day from my Spanish teacher from high school, and she said, "Hey, I'm starting an organization that's fighting human trafficking in Lawton. Would you like to join?" And I said, "I'll pray about it," which meant no. And I thought about it a little bit more, and I ended up attending a program that was put on by our law enforcement. And in that program, this officer was talking about human trafficking, and it kind of connected the dots a little bit with what my old Spanish teacher had just talked with me about. So I attended our gala, the Red Cords Gala that we host every single year. And from that point on, I was hooked because I met the people there, began to learn more information about human trafficking in the United States, and I realized that that was something that I could definitely get behind. But I also felt like it was something that was doable for me. You know, I don't have to go out and get this major degree. I don't already have to have this, all this experience. It's something that you can kind of learn on the job. So that's how I got involved with human trafficking.
How long has that been now?
It's been 2 years.
Okay. Have you noticed just in the short 2 years you've been there, because it's been a very busy 2 years of trafficking. Have you seen any changes just from your perspective?
Changes in how it's being handled, or just
changes in victims, the crime, how it's being handled, laws, any changes in the industry whatsoever?
one thing I have noticed is it seems to be getting more in the consciousness of society, and I don't know if that's a consequence of more groups springing up, more grassroots organizations springing up like the Red Cord and others, or if we're just doing a really good job in getting the message out. I like to think it's the latter. But I've definitely noticed a lot more when I mention it, there's a familiarity in my area, that is, in Oklahoma. And I think that's different from when I first started, when I started asking questions like, hey, where do I go to look up stuff about human trafficking? People were just kind of like, don't know what you're talking about. But in the latter part of this 2 years, I have noticed that people are like, oh, I think you can, I just saw something on TV, or I just heard something on the radio. So that is something that I've noticed.
What are some of the toughest challenges you guys face at the Red Cord?
I think the toughest challenge that we face is getting the conversation started, because it is such a, it's a tough topic, you know, with your audiences, to draw in the audiences, to get people interested in listening to what you're talking about. I think that's the biggest issue that we struggle with. Getting into our schools, talking with our minors, our young people who are the main target of a trafficker, that has been a challenge for us, just because, you know, bringing up this topic to young people, it kind of makes a lot of adults a little bit like panicked, like, I don't know if they're old enough, or what happens if, you know, they hear this and it upsets them. So that kind of has been the biggest challenge for the Red Cord.
Just, Crystal, this is off script. You're talking about that main target. Talk to me a little bit about your perspective of age demographic. Who are these traffickers going after? age-wise? And I want to follow up on another question there.
So from what I've seen, it's, between the ages of 12 and 14. In our area, in the Lawton, Fort Sill area, the prime age seems to be about 15, 16, 17. So that's the age demographic, regionally speaking. And I think it's just, you're kind of at a point when you're that old, when you're at that age, you're kind of confused sometimes. You're trying to find out who you are. There's a lot of stuff going on biologically speaking. So it makes perfect sense that when a trafficker waltzes in and, finds those vulnerabilities and those things that you're struggling with, and they just step in and say, hey, I have the answers, or hey, I understand you. And I think that's how come we see it at that age more so than we do, say, when you're a little bit more established. Not always, but I think that's probably why that's the case.
Has your program been received by the hotel industry at all? Are you guys doing some work in the hotel industry because Oklahoma is a pass-through state? I mean, people drive through Oklahoma to get somewhere else a lot.
Yes. So that has been one of our campaigns that we have been pushing since the founding of the Red Cord. Right now, we're in the process of creating a city ordinance that would make it mandatory that within 90 days of hiring an employee in the hotel industry or the motel industry, that the manager makes sure that they are trained via the Red Cord in recognizing the indicator signs of human trafficking. So that actually is something we've been recently working on. But as far as relationships with our hotels at the moment, we have had a few that we've trained once. There's only one hotel in our area that has stuck with it. And periodically, we've got them scheduled on the clock that we go and we train all of their staff, from the receptionist to housekeeping to the guy who comes out and helps you with your bags. So right now, we have one hotel that is completely on board. We have a few. We do have a lot of casinos in Oklahoma, so there's a lot of hotels tied to that as well. We're focusing on trying to get all of them together and trying to have this open conversation of, look, we know what's happening here. We know, you guys know that you're seeing it. You probably know what's happening here yourself. So what are we going to do about it? Because we don't want to just sit back and be like, well, to each his own, because that's not the case.
And so you feel that it could make a significant impact, maybe specifically in housekeeping? Trained because of what they see. They go into the rooms and they may see things that others don't because they actually have access to get into rooms.
I think so. And we have noticed that when we have trained hotel staff, we have a lot of, I've seen something like that before from the ladies who are doing the housekeeping. It's like, oh yeah, I remember this person, they rented several rooms. They didn't want us to come in and clean do the upkeep on the room, but they were changing towels, or when they left, I noticed there was a lot of sexual paraphernalia and the trash. And it's like connecting those dots. Once they come to our trainings, they realize that, oh, that might not have just been a weird, weekend party. That might have actually been something a little bit more sinister.
So in your opinion, you guys are finding that minor sex trafficking are happening in major hotel lines?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. I can't remember the exact percentage, the stats that are out there, but the majority of minors say that their first trafficking account occurred in a hotel or motel.
I think you answered that already, so we'll skip 10, Crystal. Are schools currently trained in Oklahoma, where you are, to combat trafficking?
At the moment, they are not. That is something that we have been working on. We have protocols in our schools for drugs. If a kid brings drugs in, we have protocols if they bring a weapon in. So that's crime number 1, and that's crime number 3. So why don't we have a protocol for number 2, which is human trafficking? That is kind of how we present it when we go and talk to our school board members, the superintendent of schools. We're hoping that they're going to finally get on board. We are having progress in some of our rural schools. That's where we seem to be the most impactful, and that's where the majority of doors for us are open. Hopefully we'll get some healthy competition and make them realize that we need to have it in our larger school district as well. But yeah, I think it's something that schools, it's a no-brainer for me because it is a young audience. And we know that it's going on there. If you have drugs and if you have weapons, you probably have human trafficking occurring as well.
Why do you think, and this is a very difficult question to answer, but why do you think someone would oppose this? Why would a school oppose the training?
So we've heard a few different things, but the one that I tend to rest with, and I think is probably the most plausible, is in our area, they're afraid of a lawsuit. So hypothetically speaking, a child comes to our training that we have, which is age appropriate. The curriculum that we use is Unlock Freedom, which I believe Florida just made mandatory, which Unlock Freedom, I believe, originated in Oklahoma. So another state has our curriculum mandatory, which that's kind of sad. So a child comes to our training, they get traumatized, if you will, or something happens where they go to their parent and they complain, and the parent gets upset and says, "This harmed my child, I'm going to sue you." That is what we've been able to piece together from some of the slight objections that we've received from school board members and from administrators. But my thinking is, they're already kind of liable for being sued anyways. Because what if a trafficking situation happens and the parent finds out that the school board passed up having a human trafficking training for their student? That seems to me like that would be a very real lawsuit in the making right there.
I feel like, personally, and you may or may not answer this, I feel like it's just an easy way out for them. It's an easy excuse not to commit. And you can comment on that or not, you don't have to. Have you guys been involved with first responders at all? Nurses, police? Your awareness at Red Court, does it extend, is it mainly community focused? And now obviously hotels, but does it also go into other areas of first responders, police, fire, nurses, etc.?
Yes, so this year we've actually branched out into our first responders and our medical personnel. And that's been really great. They've been really receptive. So this year we've trained all of our firemen, all 188 of our LEOs. We've gone into some of our ERs as well, ER nurses. And we've noticed that when we go in there, we're seeing more and more individuals that say, "Oh, that's what that was." And, you know, in a way it's kind of sad because we're like, shoot, we were too late for something. But hopefully we're getting in there. So the next time when they see it, they're going to go, "Oh, I know, there's a name for this. This is actually something that's going on." No, but we have recently started working with our first responders and medical personnel, and it's been a really good partnership to have. They're teaching us a lot, and we're giving them the knowledge that we have as well. So it's a good relationship for sure.
What would you say success? And it's hard to measure success, right? But what would you say success would look like for short-term, long-term for the Red Court? What are some of the goals and aspirations of the Red Court?
It'd be great if everyone was a member of the Red Court. We always need more volunteers and trainers. The goal of the Red Court is to spread out into the entire state of Oklahoma. And when someone hears human trafficking, they automatically associate Red Court with that and what we do in fighting in human trafficking. And hopefully with our younger audience, when they encounter, and I would like to say if they encounter, but you know the stats show that there could be it's more of a when than it's an if. When they encounter any side of human trafficking, so whether that be the recruiting stage or whether that be a friend, you know, watching a friend get recruited, that they can reflect on what they've heard the Red Court teach, whether that be in school or in our community organization training that we do. That's kind of our goal, is just to raise that state awareness. We would love to grow. That would be great. It would be great if we could, expand as our little nonprofit self could. But yeah, so that's a big goal for the Red Cord.
Talk to me a little bit about support from Oklahoma as a state. Are you guys receiving support from the state, either financially or just any other kind of support? And if so, what does it look like? If not, why not?
So the support that we've received from the state is more just the thumbs up. Good job. But you guys kind of do your thing over there. We'll do our thing, but you kind of do your thing over there. So we're trying to get a little bit more noisy, I guess you could say. So they'll have to take notice of us. It would be great if we could get more of our state officials, state electives interested in human trafficking and actually see that on a platform. And hear that talked about more often. There's a lot of issues that are talked about constantly, but human trafficking, sadly, is not necessarily one of them in Oklahoma at the moment. So we would definitely like to, in the future, see that changed for sure.
Now, tough question here, and then your generation is struggling with this. Talk to me about the influence of pornography. How prevalent is pornography? Do you guys ever run into situations where you come face to face with situations where you believe that has an influence on trafficking?
Absolutely, pornography has an influence on trafficking. I don't understand the positions that say it don't. It doesn't. One of the things that I've noticed when we've brought up the topic of pornography and human trafficking, when we get someone to come in to our trainings and we're talking about human trafficking and we finally get them to be a little more comfortable with the topic, and then we mention pornography and it's like a whole new, like, oh, don't talk about that. That's not something we talk about. There's a lot of defense of pornography, and I think that's because there is such a high addiction rate in America. I think that's possibly one of the reasons that we'll get a lot of people say, no, I don't think it's connected. I don't think, just because you watch it, just because you listen to it, doesn't mean you're going to go out and actually do it. But the more you research on pornography and you see how it affects the brain, it's a drug, and it does the exact same thing. It hits off the same receptors. In the brain, as a drug does. So, following with the pattern of drugs, you need something more and more and more to get that edge, to get that high. And finally, just watching it, when you listen to these Johns and their confessions, getting to the point of just watching it or just listening to it isn't enough. You have to act it out. The more hardcore pornography you get, also the more violent it becomes. So it's not just having sex with a stranger, it's violent sex with a stranger, or something that's very backward, basically. And so that connection from that pornography to human trafficking, which the pimp knows this, that's how come they're going to go out and they're going to find these guys. So they'll go to different venues where they know these people congregate. And it's a bed of roses for them, because they can say, oh yeah, you've watched this or you've thought of this. I've got a girl who can do this. No, they'll tell you what, I actually have the actress who's done that. Would you like to meet her? And so there's no denying the connection between pornography and human trafficking, for sure.
In your opinion, obviously child pornography, we would assume that it's forced, but can you just speak to that this is not like free will stuff?
No.
The kids are getting involved here with. There's major coercion and manipulation involved.
Absolutely. So I was just talking about this on the way up here, just about how much in our society is hypersexualized, and young people were constantly being inundated with images and with ideas of what we're supposed to look like, what we're supposed to do. I think that's the reason why sextortion is going off the charts with how much that's actually occurring. So you have a lot of young people that are sexting now. I just recently did a training for a group of about 20 girls. They were high schoolers. It was a cheerleading team. And about 15 of the 20, the majority of them were about 14, 15 years old, they were actively sexting. And so when we mentioned something about sextortion or blackmail from pictures, we had to pick eyeballs up off the floor because it never occurred to them that something like that could happen, because it's just normal. And we've heard that from a lot of young women, but also young men that says, well, everyone does it. It's just something you do. If you like this person or if you want to keep this person's attention, you just send them a picture. It's a sad reality, and that's something that you're going to see your traffickers or your pimps exploit because they know that that's the culture that's out there. So in order not to go down that stream, you have to be going upstream, not with the current, because the current is telling you just to do this. That's perfectly normal. Your friend does it, your brother does it, everyone does it. So it's perfectly fine for you to do it as well.
What is your opinion of this new hot topic term, sex work?
So it's true, it is sex work. It depends on if you're using it as an excuse, though. I think that's the difference that that I like to make. Is this person doing it of their own free will, or is there force, fraud, or coercion involved? And most of the time, when you start looking at the sex workers, there is force, fraud, or coercion involved. We always say, no little girl wakes up one morning and says, oh, I want to be a prostitute. That doesn't happen. There's something that's going on under the surface that makes them go towards sex work. I believe 70% of females in the pornographic industry said that they were sexually molested as a child. So when you look at that and you see the industry that they're in, you see that there's more at play than what meets the eye. And I think it's the exact same thing with those who are in the sex work industry. It's not just that's what they want to do because they love it. There's something else that's going on.
Do you think there's a solution for trafficking?
I do think there's a solution for trafficking, yes. Is it an easy solution? I don't think so. Because if you look at trafficking, you look at the roots of what is fueling trafficking. From the demand side, it is lust. And from the trafficker, the pimp side, it's greed. What do those two have in common? Well, it's self-centeredness. It's not having love for your neighbor. So we know there's a cure for that. There's a cure for the human condition. And I personally believe that it's faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so absolutely there's a solution for human trafficking. Now, getting to that solution, that's definitely a different story because it's going to be hard. It's definitely going to be hard. But I believe that there's definitely hope of reaching one day where we can look back and say that human trafficking was something of the past. Just like the before abolitionists, the historical abolitionists, they were able to get it out of the square, the open square. Now it's underground, modern day slavery is. But I think we can make the exact same progress and eradicate it completely in our generation or in the next generation if we just focus on what the true roots of it are and working on remedying those. So yeah, I believe it can be remedied.
Could part of that be actually exercising penalties to those who buy? Do you think that those penalties are being exercised on the Johns, those who actually pay for sex? What is your opinion? In Oklahoma, what is your opinion? What are you seeing? The laws that exist, are they being enforced?
When it comes to the demand, we've got to do a much better job, because they're getting away with basically murder, in my opinion. Because they're raping people, and to be raped is, I think, akin to murder. You're still living, which is worse, I think. Definitely, we have to have enforcement on the buyer, because that's the only reason the supply is there, is because of the demand. What is that going to look like? I'm not 100% sure. I'm developing, my thoughts on that, my opinions as I get older and the deeper I get into this. What would be the best way to squash that demand? Because I think when it becomes more dangerous to buy sex than it is right now, I think that's when you're going to see a huge cutback in people and Johns that are out there purchasing sex as it is. So that's something that we definitely need to make progress on. So to our political figures, to our community members, even before the political figures, our community members, we need to get together and say, this is wrong, come up with a plan, and then go to our politicians and say, this is what we want enforced, and you're going to do this because we have got to stop this. This has got to be something that we're all behind for sure.
What is there maybe something unique that you would like people to know about this crime that you think is a misconception, or you just don't think people know because they're not in it every day?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I've seen about human trafficking is that the victim wants this. And what I mean by that is, when I hear people talk about legalized prostitution, it's with the idea that the victim wants to be in prostitution. It's just the pimp that's getting in the way. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I have seen. These people do not want to be here. They have not chosen to be here. There's been something, force, fraud, or coercion with an adult or with a child that, it doesn't have to be force, fraud, or coercion, that's brought them to this point. And so, when you drive down your street and you see the prostitute on the corner, you just think, shouldn't have done drugs, or, if she would have gone to school, if she would have finished school. Don't think that way, because their circumstance at the moment, they don't want to be there. And it's not something that they could help at the moment. Instead of sitting there and judging them that way, why don't you think about, okay, what do I need to do to, one, to help that individual, but two, to make sure we don't have more people on the corners like that? What is the circumstance that's leading these young women and some young men to this?
How can people help the Red Cord?
So we are 100% donation supported. We also just have volunteers, people in our community who come and they volunteer their time. A lot of time is spent planning events and going out and doing trainings. Because when someone calls and says they want us to come and talk to them, it could be a group of 3, but it could be a group of 200. And we're there, and we go and we present to the best of our abilities. So one of the best ways that people can help the Red Cord is to go to our website, theredcord.org, and donate monetarily, but also come out with themselves and be the feet on the ground, the boots on the ground, if you will, because that's where change is really going to take place. Is when there are people out there doing the face-to-face interaction and doing that talking, rather than just sharing something on social media or just giving us the money. Having people out there that are actually doing something. Actions speak way louder than words in this case, and it's true in human trafficking as well.
Last question for you. Your opinion of the role social media plays in sex trafficking of minors?
I think it's huge. My generation, and I say my generation, respectively, everyone in their 20s and younger, we're raised on social media. And that is our communication. That is it. We have the jokes of, we'll talk to our friends all day on text. When we see them in real life, we're like, don't have anything to say to you. This is kind of awkward, because that is our world. The stats show that the majority of traffickers use social media to recruit their victims, because it's very easy. It's very easy to get into someone's life. So an example that I use when I talk to younger audiences is, how many of you guys lock your doors at night? And everyone raises their hands. And I'm like, okay, why do you do that? Well, it's to keep people out, you know? I don't want some stranger walking in at 2 a.m. So I ask, I'm like, okay, well, what if someone did walk in and you wake up and they're next to your bed and they're like, no, don't freak out. My name is John. I'm 17 years old. I'm friends with Charlie's sister. And I just really wanted to talk with you because I just think you're really pretty, but I didn't have the courage to do it earlier. So will you just talk with me? So how many of us would say, okay, hop on my bed and talk to them till 2 a.m? And most of my audiences laugh because they're like, that's absurd. Why would I do that? I'm like, it is funny. But how many of us do that via our phones, which are a doorway, not only into our homes, but into our life, into the thing that is the human being, if you will. And traffickers know that. They know that we're always on our phones. They know that we do a lot of personal things. Sometimes you'll post or you'll text something that you won't ever say in real life. And they use that. They use that to their advantage, I think.
That's very well put. With that being said, do you propose or are you pro a different way of monitoring social media and understanding this First Amendment with freedom of speech? But when it comes to minors, does something need to be done with online censoring somehow, or what is your opinion on it?
Well, social media has proven that they're very good at censoring at a lot of things, so it doesn't make sense to me why they're not censoring things that matter like this. They've already proven they have no problem doing it, even with the First Amendment in question. So I don't think this would be outside of the realm of reasonable because they are minors. I believe there probably are ways of censorship that's not keeping someone from sharing their thoughts or opinions or having that First Amendment right, but protecting young people from being exploited before they're fully capable of understanding what's going on, you know, before that frontal lobe, if you will, is developed. And I don't think that would be an unreasonable thing to do.
I'm gonna cut. Actually, that's so good. That statement is so good. I love that.